Welcome to Bigfoot Society. If you have Bigfoot activity to report from the same areas discussed in this episode, please reach out to me directly after this episode. And if you'd like to be on the podcast to discuss a personal Bigfoot encounter, please reach out to me directly at bigfootsociety@gmail.com. Do you wish there was more Bigfoot Society to listen to every week? Well, there is now. If you become a supporting member over at Patreon, you get a special members-only episode every single week on Wednesdays, and sometimes even more episodes. Head on over to patreon.com/The Bigfoot Society. And now let's get on with the show. All right, Bigfoot Society, got the privilege of chatting tonight with Mr. Henry Franzoni from out in the Pacific Northwest. How are you doing today, Henry?
I'm doing really well. Thanks for asking. How about you? How are you doing?
Oh, I'm doing good. I'm doing good up in my recording studio, chilling out. But a few.
Where are you located?
I'm located in central Iowa, believe it or not. So, talking about. So, I want to make sure that listeners know a little bit about what it is that you've done over the years, and we'll get more into it, Henry. But if people have watched the 97 documentary Drumming for Bigfoot, people that have watched that documentary are usually super big fans of it. Then this is the Henry Franzoni that's from that documentary. Also, Henry has written a book in the spirit of Sasquatch. Yeah. Let me know if I pronounced that correct. I tried to get the pronunciation right. I did. Okay, good. And he's living in around the Portland, Oregon area. Been involved with many different Bigfoot related things over the years. And it's going to be a chat about that. It's going to be a fun one. So, Henry, anything else that we need to put in there to kind of paint what's going on with the Henry Franzoni story?
I'm a little different than all the other Bigfoot people.
Oh, yeah. Yes. I love it.
The strange thing about me is that I was a Bigfoot freak in 1993 when I was really obsessed. For about 5, 6, 7 years, I was really obsessed. And I became a real biologist from my fascination with Bigfoot. So unlike most insane Bigfoot people, I actually became a scientist. That would be like one of the things about me that's weird. And then I worked for the tribes here in the Northwest all along the Columbia River for about 25 years. I became a government supervisory scientist, in fact, in this basin. So, imagine my surprise as I had a career in natural resources management that developed from my interest in Bigfoot.
It's fascinating how you were able to build a career that overlapped with that passion. Like it's the coolest thing ever, really. And you refer to that a little bit in your, you were in the documentary, A Flash of Beauty. You had an interview in that, and you kind of refer to that a little bit in there as well. But I wanted to start off with a few softball questions, kind of get the ball rolling. So you're in the Portland area. You've lived in there for quite a while, right? You've been in that Portland area.
Well, yeah, I moved to Portland in 1974.
Wow.
So I've been there a long time, but I moved out of Portland in the year 1997. Okay. That's really when I left. I moved to the periphery. I moved about an hour outside of town. I've always lived about an hour from Portland. Sure. And right now I live about an hour from Portland. I live in Washington, and I live down the Columbia River in a place called Oak Point.
Okay.
So I'm about, 60 miles from Portland, maybe something like that, but I'm in another state. but definitely that same area, Lower Columbia River area. I'm a river rat. I have stuck to the river, and I still am still a river rat.
So I love that the Portland area is so beautiful. You know, me and my wife, we took a trip out there, of course. You know, one of the groups of people that after Portlandia was huge, we're like, oh, we got to visit it, like everyone in their, you know, did. But
Portland's great. Yeah.
It's beautiful. So as a person that lived there for a while, did you have any favorite restaurants when you lived in that area, or anything you know, cool that you would do that maybe the tourists wouldn't know about?
Well, there was a restaurant, still is, called Frank's Handmade Noodles, which total killer, like the killer restaurant. And I actually played a regular customer on diners, drive-ins, and dives when Frank's got onto Triple D.
No way.
Yes, Frank's got onto Triple, which spoiled Frank's and turned it into two Frank's in two different places and made them go much more high end. So, you know, just by doing a Triple D appearance, it kind of messed up my favorite place, you know?
Oh, no.
Yeah, like, so I'm like, oh, man, that was, but, you know, now there's two of them, and, you know, what can I say? But yeah, and there was always a place called Montage that I loved, which was totally the great hangout spot for late night musicians and stuff.
Okay.
2 a.m. You know, it was like the great place, but now it's a food cart post COVID. So,
oh yeah, sure.
You know, it got scaled down, but yeah, there's a lot of like old school Portland stuff, Huber's, places like that people, you know, modern people don't know about, but they're still there.
Right. Did you meet Guy Fieri then?
No.
Okay.
Guy was like this, you know, he was like 3 layers of people away from me, you know, like it was evidently when he came to town, he had college friends he was visiting with. So all his producers and everything like just shot the whole episode. And then he just like came in and right at the end.
We will get to the Bigfoot stuff in a minute, listeners, but this is just, this is totally unexpected. And I love that little tidbit about diners, drives, and whatever, 3Ds. So if you watch that episode, you can actually see yourself in it. Like you're in it.
One word, I say something like, well, it's food made with love. Yeah. So
that's
like
amazing.
I actually have a line that makes it into the Triple D episode.
I'm going to watch that tonight. That is so good. Okay. It's talking about you have so many years of, being a musician. You were involved with, Caveman Shoestore is the name of your band. I was talking to Mark Marcel about that at CryptidCon. We were discussing about how he met you back in the day, and he was a big fan of that band. But through your years of being a musician, has there been a performance with a certain person or just a certain night when you're performing that really stuck out in your mind, kind of encapsulated like, oh, this is just pure magic?
There's a number of them, really. You see, I had the privilege of working with this musician named Fred Challenor. He's a bass player, and he died. And we worked together for 40 years. Oh, wow. And Caveman Shoestore was one of the bands we had together. We had 3 different bands, actually maybe more like 5 different bands, since we were kids. Since we were 19. From 19 to 64, I worked with Fred.
Wow. Something
like that. So this guy was just really one in a million as musicians go. And he was just inspired. And there were a lot of times where I'd be on stage with him, and it would just be magic. Magic would take over. And so there were, luckily, fortunately, there were some recordings made of a couple of those moments. But yeah, there was actually this one. I just got this tape and I put it on my Bandcamp site. There was a gig I played at Satyricon in 1992, and our band couldn't make it. So it was just me and Fred. But we were in the middle of recording a Caveman Shoestore record called Caveman Master Cylinder. And so Fred and I had all those songs in our head, and we went and had to play this club date, and there were only two of us. So we had to fill in all the other parts ourselves. So we had to, pretend that we were also playing the keyboards and this and then that and everything. And that particular performance, I still listen to it because, it was completely amazing. And, I just listen to it still to this day and go, oh, my God. There's those moments, right? There's those special magic moments, So, yeah, that was one. There is one, but that's one. But there's a bunch of them because I opened for Ornette Coleman in France once at the Mimi Festival.
Okay.
In 1994. And we played really well that night. And that was Caveman Shoestore. But yeah, we played really well. We had some good shows. We played some good shows for sure, where we, the standards I had were you're supposed to be able to deliver the goods every time you play live. So if you made records, you have to be able to deliver what you do on the records live, or everybody's going to go, oh man, they suck live, so.
Right. Is there a favorite recording favorite album that you came out with?
It's hard.
Or you love them all?
There may be top 3 or 4. I don't know.
Okay.
It's hard. It's hard because I like them. I like a lot of them. I like most of them that I made. Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
You said the best way to listen to your stuff then on Bandcamp, you were saying, if people want to check that out?
These days, here in the modern world, I'd put my back catalog on Bandcamp. Yeah. Okay. That's sort of the thing to do now. It's the only place you can, it walks the line where people can listen to it for free 3 times and then be asked to pay. And you can name your own price. It's not like other streaming services where you get 1/10 billionth of a cent per play. And for my music, because it's old style music now, even though actually I'm still probably ahead of where music is now, but for me, it's old style music. Only old people buy CDs and things. So I'm good with that. I have an old audience that I have to satisfy a little bit.
That's awesome. That's really cool. In the book, the Oregon Bigfoot Highway, of course, you're part of that group, the Clackamas I knew I was going to mess it. Sasquatchians, right? In your bio, it's referenced that you were raised in northern New Jersey. Do you have any interesting? It also mentions the Pine Barrens, which I'm from the East Coast originally, and I know a lot of weird stuff happens in the Pine Barrens. Did you ever have any weird stuff happen or did you go hiking in the Pine Barrens or anything like that? Or was this?
I went in the Pine. I lived in the Pine Barrens at the time. After a while, it was about the only place in New Jersey I wanted to be. But no, oddly enough, I met people who told their experiences that were really cool, but nothing for me, no, I didn't have any anything weird. And I went to the other weird place in New Jersey, the Ramapo Mountains.
Oh, tell me
The
about that.
Ramapo Mountains. Well, that's on the northwest corner, and it's similar to the Pine Barrens. You know, the Pineys live in the Pine Barrens, right?
Right.
The Jackson Whites live in the Ramapo Mountains, and they too are kind of a remnant Indian tribe, Tuscarora Indians, Hessian soldiers.
Oh, wow.
You know, some British that were escaping New York City, some Dutch, and then they went up there in the Ramapo Mountains and got isolated for 150 years since the Revolutionary War, basically, which is what happened to the Pineys and the Pine Barrens. So it's the same kind of super creepy zone. And, you know, it's got banjos playing and it's Deliverance. And,
Oh, no.
you know, it's in New Jersey, you know. So I love that about New Jersey. You know, it's got the hood and then rich people and then like the Jackson Whites and then
Right.
the hood. You're like, man, where am I? You know, it's just
That's very interesting. I'm going to have to look up that area more, the Ramapo Mountain area. I'm going to have to look into that. Because most people, when they think of New Jersey and Pine Barrens, they're thinking of like the Jersey Devil. You know, that's what they're bringing up. But
well, that's certainly one of the big stories down there. You know, that is definitely probably the main story, right? But there's a lot of Sasquatch sightings.
Oh yeah,
you know, in Pine Barrens and up in like up along the Pennsylvania New York border, up the corner there.
No doubt about it. I'd like to talk about, so let's start talking about what brought you into Bigfoot in the early 90s. And I know that it has something to do with an experience at Skookum Lake in 93, correct?
That was the very first one. Yeah, that's what sucked me in big time.
Okay.
That led to today.
Wow.
I had an idea that the Sasquatch thing was secondary the very first day, because what I was doing was I had moved to a place called Linton, which is a neighborhood in Portland, Oregon. And if you know Portland, Oregon, it's this strange little neighborhood on the very, very northwest tip of Portland, along the river, right on the riverbank. And it's far away from all the rest of Portland. It's just like a little finger that sticks out along the river and goes way up along the river. And so I was looking into the history of where I lived, and I saw that a chief, Chinook chief named Casino, had his winter camp there. And that's why it was there, you know. And I was like, wow, you know, this is Chief Casino's thing. And so then I started looking up the Indians that had lived in this winter camp. And I found a story, the famous story that everybody sees, Paul Kane wrote in I forget. Wait, hold on. Cat interference.
Oh, no problem.
Get down, kitty. Get down, kitty. Okay, sorry.
No sweat.
The story basically was about Skookums that lived up on Mount St. Helens. He was a painter, and he wanted an Indian guide to take him up to top of Mount St. Helens, and no Indian would do it because the Skookums lived there. And they were cannibal hairy giants. And they lived at Spirit Lake up at the, get down, kitty. Kitty, get down. And so I said, wow, you know, that's really fascinating. And then I realized from reading this story that it took place on the shore right in front of my apartment in Linton.
Oh, wow.
And I was like, wow, you know, that they were talking right here about this Skookum that lived on top of Mount St. Helens. So, of course, at that time, which was 1993, everybody had heard stories about Sasquatch up on St. Helens. I mean, that was kind of a, you know, the standard place everybody said they lived around here. So I went, wow, this must be about Bigfoot, and that Skookums must be Bigfoot. That was my big insight.
Okay.
So I found a place called Skookum Lake, and I read about the history of the name, because Oregon has this great book that lays out the reasons for everything being named what it's named. So it's got a great place name dictionary available. And in this dictionary, it basically said, well, it's called Skookum Lake because that's where the evil god of the woods lives. And I said to my wife, or was soon to be my wife, wow, we got to go there and camp. We got to check out the evil god of the woods.
Totally.
See if he still lives there. I'm
Yeah.
like, hey, let's see if he still lives there, man. Let's go. So it was a joke, right? And I went up there, and before I got to Skookum Lake, I ran into Bigfoot, okay? When I was a quarter mile away, but I didn't see anything. But what happened in brief to me, the very first moment I ever went out there, was a electric force field whacked into me, made all my hair stand up on end. My wife immediately passed. I'm going to take a nap, and just passed out on the front seat next to me.
Oh, man.
It was dead silent. All the crickets stopped chirping and went dead silent.
Henry, are you still there? That's a little weird.
I'm back.
That was really weird because right when you're telling that story,
I know
everything just wigged out, dude.
Yep. Listen,
Wow.
Let me tell you, they're listening, man.
Oh, my goodness.
The thing is that this, my starter motor was blown. The force field that made my hair stand up on end blew my starter motor. And we were marooned there and had to stay. And the smell went away, and the force field went away, and my wife woke up all at the same time.
Really?
Like 2-3 minutes later. Like it was like for 3 minutes, I'm like I feel static electricity, And so I said, wow, I don't know what Bigfoot is, but that wet dog smell made me picture in my mind a giant, hairy thing, the smell was what gave my mind the picture that, hey, this must be a big, hairy giant, the Bigfoot that we all hear about all the time. Just power of suggestion in a way, But, it was a strong suggestion. So after that very first encounter, I was like, well, that's what people call Bigfoot, but it's certainly not a wild animal. I said, I don't know what they think, if they think that this is some ape running around out here, but, no ape has a force field and blows my starter motor and knocks my wife out and the whole shtick, and the crickets seem to know all about it because they just went quiet. And then when it left and the smell left, they woke up again. It was like the other animals were not so freaked out. They were like, that was my opinion at the time, was like, it seemed to me that the crickets were, hey, we'll just shut up and then we'll start again. Big deal,
Right.
But that being the very first moment that I ever encountered Bigfoot, I didn't encounter Bigfoot, but and I didn't see a damn thing either. But there was nothing to see.
Right.
So this is what led me down the screwball road. A month later, I went back, and my wife and I camped out and stayed up all night. And I was like, okay, let's stay up all night and watch for Bigfoot. And I was disappointed when instead of Bigfoot, a UFO came out of the ground below me. And
Okay, this
we
was
watched
not.
this UFO take off in front of us.
Whoa, really?
Yeah, really close too. Like we could see the details on the, construction. we were on the top of a valley, ridge between two valleys, and it came out of the bottom of one of the valleys and rose up in front of us and then hovered in front of us. So we got like this really good 20-minute look at it. Well, it wasn't 20 minutes, it was maybe 2 minutes. But
That's a long time.
It was a long time.
Yeah.
And it was very close to where the starter motor got blown out. I was maybe a quarter mile from that spot, less. I was near the same spot. And then it got super strange in the morning because we went down to see where this thing came out of the ground, because we could see exactly where it came out of the ground. And we checked these landmarks and we had all these things. And we said, okay, so if we get to this spot where these trees are, it's right over there. So we drove around logging roads to go there. And when we got there, in front of us was a government SUV with two men in black and a woman in red. And the two men in black started walking towards us. And they looked just like the classic cliche. They had sunglasses, tall and thin, walked awkward, white shirts, shiny black shoes. It was like, uh-oh. And so I looked at my wife, who didn't know anything about the men in black. And I said, hey, those are the men in black. We got to get out of here. And she said, okay.
Totally.
Okay. I was like, man, hold on. So I threw it in reverse and I just like jammed out of there. I had my van. I just like went on the gravel and just took off. So since those three things happened basically in the same spot in the Cascades of Oregon, the first month I ever looked for Bigfoot, like the very first month I ever looked for Bigfoot, I was like, wait a minute, what the hell is going on? Like, honestly, what is going on? So
wow.
I had a problem because every time I told people that story, what I just told you, nobody believed me. Nobody believed me at all. Everybody would tell me to, don't tell that story. Don't tell people that. I'm like, I'm sorry. I'm sorry it happened to me. Sorry.
Nah, dude, tell that story. That's an amazing story, Henry. I love that. That was
first month. That was my first month of looking for Bigfoot.
Your first month. Holy mackerel.
Yeah. The very first month. 1993. August 1st.
1993.
1993 was the first date. September 1st, 1993 was the second date. And those dates are etched in my mind because that's what sucked me into Bigfoot completely, where I went, wow, whatever's going on, it's deep, man. whatever is really going on around here, it's deep. That's all I can say.
So if I was to ask either of you at that time, you both would be in agreement that, you both saw a UFO.
Because, that was part of why we knew it was real. Because the thing is that at the moment we saw it, we saw it, right? And it came up and it was dead silent. And it was silver, glowing white for most of it. And then down at the end, like an ice cream cone, it had an orange half ball. And the orange half ball suddenly glowed a lot brighter. It went, and my wife said, JADO, jet assisted takeoff. She said, wow, it looks like JADO. Like it looked like it was getting ready to,
yeah.
And then it did. It just squirted way up into the sky, right?
Wow.
And so right after that happened, the weird reaction that your mind has, and both my wife and I had the same reaction, which is you just pretend it didn't happen. Like suddenly you're like, I didn't see that. No, that didn't happen.
Really?
Your brain goes down. It's just like, I didn't see that. But then my wife said this one thing. She said, it was near and then it was far.
Whoa.
And for some reason, that triggered the whole memory. And we both went, wow, we just saw a UFO right in front of us come out of the ground.
That's amazing. Have there been sightings in that same area that you've heard of or similar things over the years after that? Or
yeah, see, after that, I myself had my own little network of Boy Scouts.
Okay.
That I would, in the summertime, I would always talk to these Boy Scouts that would camp at the Boy Scout camp up there, and I'd always go, keep your eyes out for orange balls, man. Orange balls,
awesome.
Man. Keep an eye out. And so they would tell me things, after the summer, at the end of the summer for like 94, 5, 6 in there. For the next 3 years, I'd get reports from all these kids because well, that was when Ray Crowe had the bookstore. He had the Western Bigfoot Society bookstore.
Yeah,
so
totally.
I would meet all these kids at the Western Bigfoot Society, and then I'd recruit them in my, hey, keep an eye on, look out for orange balls up there, man. I knew a lot of, and then I went back many times. Up until 96, you could drive up to Skookum Lake. But after the flood of 96, all access was cut off. You have to hike 16 miles now to get there.
Really?
Uphill. Yeah, so it's way more inaccessible post 96. But up until 96, yeah, I had like a lot of, I saw orange balls up there a bunch of times. I had more encounters with Bigfoot up there. And I never saw one, but definitely interacted. I had things would happen like this, where I was driving up there, once again in my van with my wife in the passenger seat, and suddenly in my right ear, I heard psst, psst, like somebody was trying to get my attention. So I turned towards my wife like she was doing it. But at that exact millisecond, she was turning towards me.
Oh, no.
Because someone went psst in her ear. And she said, and we both said what to each other at the exact same instant. And then we both freaked out because we realized that someone was playing with us telepathically. And we were in a van with closed windows. So, that kind of thing happened. That was maybe a mile from Skookum Lake, okay?
Man.
And that was maybe spring of 94, like a little later. But yeah, over time, I've had so many experiences that's how it started for me. No, the thing is that, I mean, I had today I've had like 25 encounters or something. I don't count them. I don't even think about it. It's different now for me.
And when you say, so you're having, when you're going certain places, things are happening to you from an outside force of some sorts. That's
an interesting term, inside or outside.
Right.
I don't know.
Yeah, that's
don't know.
It's people. If you're new to all this, I really, really suggest that you go over to Amazon and you look up Henry Franzoni and you read his book, because it's really interesting. It's available as I think it's available in a few different formats, but it's a very interesting read. And also it's a great resource as well, because Henry makes all these incredible maps of all across North America that have to do with different names like Skookum, Spirit Lake, all sorts of, monkey related things. It's just very interesting. I don't think there's any other resource that has done that to the extent that Henry did. So it's a good resource to have at your disposal as well. I want to make sure I get that little plug in there for the book. It's really quite good.
I'm going to have to do an anti-plug.
Okay. All right.
When I wrote that book, it was the best I could do at the time.
Sure.
Looking back at it today, I'm like, it's 95% correct.
Okay.
But 5% totally wrong.
Okay. All right. I mean, the map part is solid though, right?
The map part's totally,
the map part is solid.
Yeah. Well, that was basically an extension of the story I just told you about. Figuring out Skookum Lake. I ran with that idea and found every Skookum anything anywhere. And then I went beyond that and found all the words I could find in English or in various, say, Hapton or Salish or Chinook or whatever. And I ran with that idea to like an absurd degree where I tried to make a database of 4,000 spots that had been named for something like that. But, it's an interesting experiment because one can look at place names just like sighting reports. They're almost the exact same thing. When you get a sighting report, you don't really know if it's true or not true, or if it's a hoax or not.
Right. Sure.
And very much with a place name, if it's named Bigfoot Springs, you go, well, maybe it's named because somebody saw a Bigfoot there. Maybe it's named as a joke and it's a hoax or this or that, or it's marketing or sales or, that kind of thing. So you don't get much more than a sighting report with a place name, but it's a clean data set because it's pre any media mention of Bigfoot or Sasquatch or anything.
Sure.
These place names got laid down a long time ago. So you're looking at an interesting data set. That's what I really thought people would find interesting in that book. And I guess it still holds. Yeah. And I didn't like the maps people made. So I was like, man, you can make better maps than that. So.
There you go. Yeah, they're good. They're good. What's the 5% that you would change?
I didn't really understand the physics of how Bigfoot does what Bigfoot does. Okay. Well, I didn't even understand what Bigfoot was at all. Okay. And I didn't understand what I was. And so that gives you a big sort of room for error. Yeah.
Sure.
There's plenty of error room there because I have a much better theory of how it all works now. And I didn't have that before. I didn't really understand how they could do what they do. Well, how the stories I'm just telling you, I didn't really understand how I could get hit by a force field that blew my starter motor, and telepathically somebody could, talk to my ear, but now I have a sense of how that might work, so it's different. And
that's awesome.
I wrote that book before I had that sense of how it might work. So that's what's different.
So is that a thing where there might be like a follow-up book where you kind of set some things straight, or?
That's what I'm doing.
Okay.
Actually, pardon me, cat interference here.
No problem.
Cat interference. Banger, you got to get down. Get down, Fang, Fang. Okay, here we go. Yes, well, yeah, video. Yes. Welcome.
It's awesome. I love it.
The cat thing. Yes, that one of the things I'm doing in this, I'm just sure I have everything that I want to say, but it's not organized right.
Gotcha.
But it's all, I'm almost there. Damn it. I've been struggling with it for years, honestly. Oh, wow. I had to wait for the right time. There's a lot of things that had to had to wait before you could talk about them. And I'm surprised, but it's okay to talk about them now. And I got the word, so it's okay.
Well, there's plenty of people that'll be waiting for that follow-up to come out, just so you're aware of that. There's one thing I want to circle back on. So you said that you were having a lot of Boy Scouts bring reports to you. Do you have that stuff written down? Is that like old records that, no, you don't have it anymore? Okay. I'm just curious.
Once I did, because once upon a time, I assembled a database for the Bigfoot Research Project of 485 sighting reports in Oregon and Washington.
Sure.
And I helped them put it together. And we, back in the day, back in 93 to 98, we had employees who would go out and see what they could learn, because almost all the sighting reports we got were so old that, the witnesses weren't alive anymore. But whatever we could learn from going to the site, we learned. And we did GPS coordinates everywhere. We made a database. And I had all of that once as a very valuable thing. But then I gave all of the questionnaires that we made people answer to Autumn Williams in like the year 2000.
Okay.
Maybe 1999.
Sure.
I thought she would be a good inheritor of all of that material. So I dumped, because at that point, my wife was nagging me about the boxes in my closet.
Yep.
And saying, hey, when are you going to do with those here? And I was like, yeah, screw it. Get rid of all that Bigfoot stuff. So I got rid of all my Bigfoot artifacts.
Oh, wow.
I got rid of, and I purged myself in the year 2000 of all my casts, hair samples, photo, everything. I was just like, man, people. So, I had a real epiphany of hatred. And, well, not really, but I was pretty sick of how mean everybody was in the Bigfoot world and the whole, tenor and arguments and, the Bigfoot scene. I was just sick of it. But, I had this thing where I got rid of everything. And then by 2008, I had accumulated so much more stuff anyhow. Yeah. That I wrote that book, and I was like, well, geez, I might as well write a book because, I got all this new stuff since I got rid of everything. And that's kind of what happened again, in that I was going back and looking and going, gee, I don't have any of that stuff anymore. And no, I have all new stuff again. And I'm like, no, moving on. And I'm not going to be so rash anymore. It was foolish for me to throw all that stuff away. I should have kept it. Cliff Barrickman gave me a single cast to start my collection again.
Oh, that's so nice.
Yes. So I have one cast now to begin over with but for me, that end of the phenomenon was never the interesting end. I was much more interested in the civilization, let us say. I'm much more interested in how Western civilization views it, how all the other cultures view this phenomenon, and how they differ radically. And I'm very interested in the physics of how Bigfoot turns invisible and does all this stuff. And so I'm really like an engineer and I'm a warrior for the tribes, a contract warrior for the tribes. I've found, in a sentence or two, for me, Bigfoot seemed to be the caretaker of all the other animal species, including us. Bigfoot seemed to have a caretaker role in nature. And I became a true I wanted to become a true conservationist, in part because I kind of sensed that that's what Bigfoot was. That Bigfoot was a true conservationist in its own way. And that may not be the thing that strikes other people, you know, when they go looking for Bigfoot, they go, whoa, man, you know, whatever. But for me, that's what struck me. And it turned into a career of doing conservation work for the tribes. So my interest in Bigfoot just sort of naturally led right there because that's what I saw when I went looking for Bigfoot, is the whole question of what is their role in nature? I mean, we're people, right? And there's animals. Right. Well, what is their function? You know, that became like, that was the important question to me. What's the function of Bigfoot in nature? Like, I mean, what are they doing here, right? They're obviously, I didn't have a problem with they exist or not, right?
Sure.
Right from the first second, I was like, well, something exists, and it ain't an animal. And so I thought the caretaker thing was what really struck me. They just struck me as caretakers of. And then, of course, I read a lot of other cultures' views of Bigfoot that in the years since have really confirmed that for me, that a lot of other cultures see Bigfoot as a protector and as a person, a type of person, but as a protector of the tribes. They're seen as, you know, it appears to me that I wasn't too far off in my guess about them being caretakers. Yeah. Western civilization may not know that, but many other cultures do.
It's very interesting, and I'll be super interested to see how what else you have learned over the years. You know, when that follow-up is able to be fully.
I'm trying to get it out.
It's going to be awesome.
I'm hoping.
Oh, wow.
In a month or two, I can do it. I'm just trying.
That's awesome.
Really, I'm trying. I've been talking about it a long time. I've driven people crazy because I've never finished it.
It is so weird. I was reading a book on Shasta, Mount Shasta, the folklore and legends of it, by D.W. Naif, I believe is the name. And you're called out pretty good in it, Henry. You're the
really?
Stuff. Oh yeah. You're referenced in it. It's very interesting. I was like, I'm reading this at the same time. This is weird. But yeah, when he's talking about different Native American things around the Shasta area. So it was very cool.
I was really fascinated with that subject of all the Native American spirit animals, for lack of a better term, or the spirits that the Native Americans communicate with. That's the topic that's really interesting to me. And Bigfoot is one of those spirits, by the way.
So you view Bigfoot as like a spirit animal, or more of like a type of spirit? Or I know it's I would say, a huge from thing.
My point of view, Bigfoot is both.
Okay.
Bigfoot is animal, flesh and blood, and also has puzzling powers that lend it to being a spirit as well. But Bigfoot's no different than you or I, and now I understand much more of how it all works. We are the same in our construction also.
Very interesting.
So, yes, we are clearly related.
Gotcha. I want to rewind a little bit. Let's go back to 93 and reading in your book. There's a part where you talk about becoming a member of the board of advisors for the Bigfoot Research Project headed by Peter Byrne. And so I'm just, how, we've got the thing that happened to you and your wife. How does that, like, how do you meet Peter Byrne? What's that connection there? How did that all start? Because that's quite the connection to get.
That's how. The way it happened was, that happened to me August 1st.
Okay.
So August 2nd, I went to that bookstore. I remember seeing the Bigfoot in the window, and it was Ray Crowe in the Western Bigfoot Society, but over in the St. John's neighborhood in Portland.
Yeah.
I remember this bookstore, and my wife and I were like, yeah, remember that bookstore that we always see? Yeah, let's go see what's going on. So I went in there and I introduced myself to Ray Crowe, and I told that story to Ray Crowe, like my wife and I did. For some reason, because I don't know what, he and Peter Byrne had just moved to Hood River, Parkdale, technically, where he was setting up the Bigfoot Research Project. And Ray Crowe was like, at that moment, he was like, well, I should tell Peter Byrne any Bigfoot sighting reports.
Oh, so you got to.
Peter Byrne.
You got to.
And he's like, well, Peter, this guy's in my bookstore, and he just, told me this story. So moments later, I met Peter Byrne,
wow.
And then it just, one thing led to another. He captured my imagination, mascot and his jungle hat. And
exactly.
Really, I mean, I was like, wow, this is awesome, and then I'm like I'm useful. So within a short time, I had made websites for Western Bigfoot Society, Bigfoot Research Project.
Yep.
Ron Moorhead, Patty Patterson, Roger's wife, and Renee Dahinden. And I made all these websites because I was a computer geek, right? And so I was like, well, I can help you, Peter, with your Bigfoot Research Project. I know all about, I'm good with computers, man. So I did all this GIS work for him. And then I did all these databases that we're talking about. And, and I was like, yeah, man, I can help you do this shit. So then he invited me to be on the board of advisors like a couple months later.
Okay, gotcha.
I was and there I was till the very end, until the bitter end. Until the bitter end, yes. But he helped me get into this thing really well. He, vis-a-vis what we were talking about before,
right?
He bought me a CD of the GNIS database, of the Geographical Names Information System.
Oh, cool.
Because this was the beginning of the internet, and it wasn't yet online. Today it's just a website. But back then, it was a CD that you had to buy. And Peter Byrne bought that for me to help me get totally into the place name thing. So, he encouraged me like that. And that helped me, just get sucked in. Then when Jeff Glickman came in and took over, I still hung around and helped him write, his book, his great paper of 1998, the Towards a Resolution of the Bigfoot Phenomenon.
Uh-huh.
And I just in that paper, actually, you'll see, pardon me, a lot of my early place name stuff where I'm like, wow, look, I looked for this name and I found this.
Right.
So, it was so semi-scientific, but the basic idea was a sound idea, as it turned out, because I went to a lot of those places and had encounters.
That's awesome. It's so cool. Because the website thing. So I'm a computer guy. And I just found that fascinating that you were the guy in the mid 90s that was making the websites for these guys. Like, so listed in your book, it's like, Peter Byrne, Renee Dahinden, Moneymaker, Chris Murphy, Ray Crowe, Ron Moorhead. And that's just, man, that's awesome. Like, and also you made the website for Patty Patterson too.
Well, we made one, but she didn't ever want it to go live, and then we killed it, but she made one because we had a relationship. Well, there was a lot of good that came out of that period. And
okay,
one of the things Peter Byrne is the best at is raising money. Peter Byrne had more money to look for Bigfoot than anybody and could obtain capital. And so other Bigfoot researchers really resented him for that. Because, that ascot, it worked.
What was it?
He had the money to pay Patty Patterson $20,000, digitize the Patterson film from her copy. Okay. From her copy, which is the only, it's not the original, it's the first copy. And she has it in a bank vault. And by giving her 20 grand, she let us digitize all 952 frames.
That's awesome.
Dahinden, Peter Byrne raised the money to pay him 20 grand so we could use something like 37 of his still photos, because Dahinden owns the still rights to the Patterson film.
Right.
Patty owns the motion rights. So Dahinden, we paid 20 grand to use these towards a resolution of the Bigfoot phenomenon. And Glickman, I think, ended up only using about 15, 16 frames from the film. But Dahinden was really anti-scientist, and so he refused to let it be published in a scientific journal. That was written into the contract. It was absolutely forbidden.
Really?
Yep. Dahinden really,
that's
the thing about Bigfoot is the intersection of commerce and science, and wackadoodles and everything else. It's an interesting problem, man. Really.
That's so intense. You went from 0 to 60, literally, in the way that you went from having this encounter, and then you're just thrown into the crazy stuff with like Peter Byrne and Renee Dahinden. And I mean, you actually met Renee Dahinden.
Renee was a good friend, actually.
Okay.
Of all those people, I've met them all.
Really?
Yeah. Well, I mean, Grover and John Green and Renee, and I mean, I knew them all. But Renee was a friend.
Okay.
Renee and I became friends because, in my opinion, Renee was. He was the smartest of all those guys, in my opinion. But that just, that's just what I think. I liked him the best, whatever. I liked him the best. He was the most fun.
So
you could sit around at the gun club drinking with Renee, telling Bigfoot stories late into the night. And it was a lot more fun than,
That is so awesome. So you were actually hanging out with Renee like you're like hanging out like buds.
Yeah, the last 3-4 years of his life.
Wow.
I hung out with Renee. Yeah, because, I was not the typical kook. I mean, sure. I helped put 20 grand in his pocket. So I was obviously not, easy to dismiss as a woo-woo guy.
Right.
Well, they didn't dismiss me, really. That's the thing, is in the end, those guys were slightly more open-minded than you would expect. I have told variations of, Bigfoot's a spirit and a flesh and blood animal combined. I've told variations of that. It's just now I understand how it works a little better. And it's like they are both. We're both. Everything's both. Don't worry. It really is. It's soul and physical body, right? Are there physics yet that describe the soul? No, there's religion that describes the soul.
Sure.
But I'm talking hard physics. That's what helps. When you understand the physics of your soul, it is much easier to understand Bigfoot. That's what I'll say. Yes.
That is an intense statement right there. I like that. Yeah, I like that, man. That's good. That's good. From the years of talking, you said you were able to talk to Renee over a few years. Are there any conversations about Bigfoot that you can still remember, or anything, fun that stands out in your memories? Or
Oh yes. There's well, it's pretty hysterical. But yeah, no, the strange thing, for me, Renee would, we'd talk about everything, right? Bigfoot, everything. He thought there was some kind of mental aspect to it. That's what he used to say.
Really?
When he was drunk enough and it was private and late at night enough, and he would go, there is some mental aspect to this thing.
Oh, wow. That's
awesome. I used to go, wow, Renee's actually got a clue, that used to really please me.
Yeah.
I'm Mr. Out There, supposedly, but I'm
sure.
not. But Renee had, through experience, brings you there. Like those experiences I told you about clued me into a different side. I always say people see different faces of the Bigfoot mystery, right? And it's really probably the experience you had is the face you see. And it's probably just that simple. And so I had a weird experience. So that's the face I saw. Was it's weird. It's not this monkey walking across the street. It's weird, man. So I was very pleased when Renee and some of the really old guys, through experience, because as you go along, weird things happen to you. I can guarantee you that.
Sure.
You can see Bigfoot cross the road like another dozen times, but then one time, the 13th time, Bigfoot stops your car dead in the middle of the road with his mind, and you go, wow, that's really weird. So what I'm saying is, it seems to me that anybody that really looks and really tries and gets and goes the distance and does the work and gets out there and really does it, the closer you get to them, the weirder it gets.
Gotcha.
Like when you start to actually have experiences, they're not what you expect. And you're like, wow, I was expecting a gorilla. And, and as time goes by, as you, I mean, that's what I have observed in others is
Sure.
Over time, they get a little more open to the weird side because weird shit happens as they look, if they really look. And maybe it takes a decade or two, it takes time before something weird happens. But I find a lot of times with those very old guys, that's all I meant to really convey as.
Man, there's a lot. I'm going to ask you. So in this interview, I'll be asking some really random questions. And if it doesn't hit, we're just going to go right past it. And it's more for me personally.
I feel like talking about Bigfoot. So yeah, anything you want. Man.
So I'm in Iowa, right? So I researched Bigfoot in Iowa, and I found out that from a guy that I talked to who was involved with Bigfooting in Iowa in the 1970s, that Renee Dahinden actually came out to Iowa to talk to them. Did he ever is that anything that he probably never mentioned anything about an Iowa trip or anything like that? If not, that's fine.
No, he's never mentioned that.
Okay.
One, no.
All right. No sweat. Did you ever talk to Patty Patterson about the PG film at all? Did you ever get to talk to her about that?
No, I just talked money.
Okay. Yeah, you're just the guy putting the stuff together. All right, cool.
I only talked money with her, and then I talked websites with her. But yeah, no, I never. No, I had never once broached the subject. We discussed at length, what her copy was exactly,
Sure.
and how much we would pay, and how long we could have it, and what we could do to it. We went through the whole. We had to. It was complicated. It's a valuable asset, and
Oh yeah.
we did the best we could at the time, but that project ended in tears. And things happened. For example, we made a stabilized version of it back then. In 1995, we had this beautiful stabilized version of Patty Patterson's copy.
Wow.
And we just destroyed it. We didn't, at the end, it was like, well.
You destroyed it?
Well, it got destroyed, yes. Yeah, because
Wow.
from that project, there was a staff of 3. Peter Byrne, a staff of 3, and the board of advisors, of which really there were, we were like volunteers, right? And the board of advisors, we just sort of kibitz and show up, and
Sure.
we were just a pain in the ass. So I'm the only one that acknowledges that it ever happened. The rest of the staff has removed it from their resumes. The project leader after Peter Byrne has removed all mention of it from any of his CVs or anything. No one wants to talk about it or say a word. At the end of the project, we had 70 CDs with this digitized copy of the Patterson film on it. And one of the staff took 68 of the CDs, and I took the first 2, which I've lost since then.
Oh man.
Because I just wanted a memento of the first 2. What the hell? And she buried him. None of these people
She buried him?
Well, none of these people want to have anything to do with anything in Bigfoot whatsoever. They've scrubbed any mention of it in their lives since. So all of them have just zero mention of ever having ever existed.
Okay.
I am the only human being who will talk about this project.
Wow. That is so intense, Henry.
Literally it died in 1998 was when I would
Wow.
say, right? And that was the real death. And so 24 years later, it's like,
That's crazy, man.
I'm the last person who will even, but even at the time, I wound up with everything. That's a lot of what I gave to Autumn Williams back then, because I was the only of the people of the project. There might have been others who were. I was the one really focused on solving the problem.
Sure.
I really wanted to figure out the mystery. I still do. That's what motivated me, is I wanted answers. I wanted to know what was going on. And so everybody kind of knew that about me. Like I was the true believer that was like, hey, I want to solve the mystery. the Patterson film copy, like I said, I only took the first 2 discs, and the other staff member took the others.
So that was not a literal thing, right? Like they didn't literally bury them in the ground. Like it was just they got rid of them.
Just who knows what she did.
Okay.
She
I got you.
divorced. She never talked to a Bigfoot person again, and never acknowledged any connection to Bigfoot anything ever again with anyone. And she moved off, got another job, and married a guy, moved on, had a life.
Good for her. Good for her. We'll let her have her life. I do want to talk, because the history of this, I don't think exists anywhere, is how did the documentary Drumming for Bigfoot come about? Like, what's the background of that? Was that your idea or?
Yes.
Okay.
The way that came about was, I better light this to tell you this story. Because, you see, a guy named Anthony Wonke and I smoked joints, drank beers,
Okay.
and drove all around the Pacific Northwest for 9 weeks in a rental car, interviewing Bigfoot people all over the Northwest.
No way.
And scouting locations. And we had 2 tapes to listen to in the car. One was Schoolie D, if you know your early rap. And Schoolie D, one of the hardest of the hard. And the other one was Tortoise Head. And we listened to these 2 tapes and smoked joints and drank beers for 9 weeks.
Oh, that's amazing.
And wrote the script.
While you were oh my goodness.
And we casted it too.
It's so good. Okay. That documentary is one of it's my favorite thing because of the culture of the 90s and also like the way it's edited. Did you edit it too?
No, those guys were masters. Anthony Wonke was the assistant producer, and really he wrote the majority, but he'll tell you it's my movie. I really wrote the majority. You know, we'll disagree about who wrote the majority. But we went through we met every lunatic Bigfoot person in the Northwest, and the idea was to cast interesting narrative characters.
That's awesome. Yes.
You're talking about, like, I went and introduced them to Peter Byrne and to Dahinden, and then to Grover Krantz and John Green. You know, I was like, Moorhead. I'm like, okay, you got to meet the guys, you know.
Right.
So I introduced them and thinking one of these people is going to be the spokesman, right? Because we were looking for spokesmen. We were looking for who was going to be the main narrative character. So all those guys tell the same story. They give the same interview every time. It's boring. We don't want those guys.
Right. And exactly.
I was like, oh, okay. And they were like, yeah, no, we want you. You know, you're the main narrative character, and Larry Lund will be the secondary main character.
It's so good.
You know, so we got Larry and me to be the narrative characters. And people don't know this is how that movie got made, but yeah, that's how it got made. And then we had what we were trying to do was to coordinate it with the Bigfoot Research Project so that when the big paper was coming out,
that is intense.
The first plot that was the big reveal was, okay, and here's the big scientific report.
Oh, but, really?
Yeah, that was going to be the original way it went, right? But Peter demanded way too much money. And
Fair
he was
enough.
like, well, you gotta pay me X, Y, Z if you want to do that. And,
yeah. All right. Is Anthony still around? Do you know?
He works for the BBC. See, the people that did that all worked for Channel 4 and the BBC. They were
Okay.
the top pros. Norman
Wow.
Hall was the head guy. Anthony Wonke was the second guy. John Waters, the guy that plays the cameraman, was David Attenborough's cameraman.
Right.
You know, like, and the cameramen we had besides him were of the same quality. And the sound guy was incredible. He got the best drum sound out in the middle of the woods because he had such high-end gear. It was staggering, you know, and they were all total pros that really knew what they were doing. And Norman Hall was in charge of that. But that team of guys, see, after the 9 weeks, then they came and we shot it for 6 weeks. So it actually took 15 weeks, and then it went to editing. And there's, you know, just like every movie, there's like 5 times the footage that you'll never see.
Oh, can you? I can't imagine the stuff that like is on the floor after the editing. Like, what's the stuff that didn't make it in? Oh, I would love to see, but you'll never see it.
Not make it in. Most did not make it in.
Oh my goodness!
We went and picked those people because they were interesting narrative characters. You know, we were looking for quirky. The British people in general, like the more, you know, idiosyncratic narrative character rather than, you know, American style, you know, straight ahead narrative character. You know, they like idiosyncrasies. So I love making that movie, but like I said, we basically got drunk and stoned and wrote it and had a
It makes the doc even better. Who did the music for the doc? It's really cool.
I don't
music.
know. That was people, Norman Hall and Anthony.
Okay,
Wonke,
just whoever. Yeah.
I don't know who they were. The music great.
One of the I guess you could say quirky characters in it that the Howard Hall guy in the Goat Mountain area. Do you know whatever happened to him?
No, but I think he steals the show. I think he's
so good.
He steals the movie. Yeah, he steals the movie. Howard. No, don't know what happened to Howard, you know, and one time I used to hang out where he lives was really near Skookum Lake.
Really?
Not that far, like a valley or two over. A valley or two over, you know. So I used to hang out in the area, and then I'd stopped hanging out in that area after 96. Really, after that movie, I stopped hanging out in that area. So occasionally I visit the Clackamas area, but it's, you know, I set my stakes wider now. Yes.
Do you remember any people that you had talked to in those 9 weeks that didn't make the cut?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Millions of them.
Oh man.
Well, yeah, a lot. Because see, it was like going down the list of all the people I knew. So there was a guy named Dennis Hereford who was a Washington State Patrol guy. And back then, he didn't talk to Bigfoot people. But he was actually the guy that the state of Washington would call when there was a Bigfoot incident at a construction site or something.
Oh, wow. And
so he had the greatest track casts and measurements and data collection of anybody ever. And I mean, he was the guy Washington called, you know, and he would measure the tracks and the stride and the this and the that, and, you know, just do the straight cop thing. And he was a super badass woodsman. That the other job he had for Washington, the state of Washington, was they would call him when there was a prison escapee hiding out in the woods, and he would track them down.
No way.
Yeah, so Dennis Hereford was this insane character that, I mean, I was just like, oh man, you know, like, we got to introduce people to Dennis Hereford.
Dude, what could have been? Oh my goodness. but that's just how it goes.
Yeah,
You know?
no, and I mean, it's many years later, so I have no idea what he's up to now. But I think now, like, everybody knows about him, like, you know, Moneymaker and the BFR. You know, I think everybody's figured out Dennis Harryford exists.
Yeah.
But who else? Yeah, there was Datus Perry, and really Datus. It was the only film ever taken of Datus, and it's too bad. It was right before he died, but he was one of my biggest influences, and he was a logger that lived in Skamania County, and had 13 encounters with Bigfoot, as he used to tell us.
Wow.
And but he turned out to be one of the most insightful people and have the most valuable insights, in my opinion, you know, and he got completely cut. And then there were two Macaw elders that we interviewed, George All and Frank Smith. That were their white names. And they were 80 and got to interview them. And it was like this. It was like we went on and on and on about Bigfoot. And the only thing they would say was they'd say, well, you know, like 1947, a serviceman stationed down the road at the air base saw one, he says. And that you can find in John Green's book, On the Track of the Sasquatch, that particular incident.
Okay.
And if you went to the tribal bookstore, they had John Green's Track of the Sasquatch. And that was the only Bigfoot story they would tell was, oh, that one that's in John Green's book, you know. Okay. And I was like, well, geez. So then I said, well, what about the little people? And they said, oh, the little people, well, they're in the next valley. You want to meet them? And
no way.
Then we got on to the sea monsters. And they had seen this sea monster. Each of them had seen it 3 times in their life over 80 years. And Nia Bay. And basically it was Cadborosaurus as the modern.
Oh, Caddy, right?
Right. Well, both of these elders described 6 different encounters they had with Caddy in Nia Bay. And we cut all that. And I was like,
oh my goodness.
You know, I was like, shit, man, we should have kept that, man. I know it wasn't Bigfoot, but, you know, really, there's people that would have been interested in that.
Holy mackerel, Henry. Oh, my goodness. Wow. I never would have expected all that. That's crazy, dude.
Well, cool, yeah, and nothing to it. That airmen saw it in 1947.
That is,
but it's pretty crazy.
Oh my goodness!
But yeah, all that's on the cutting room floor. I know that because those are the things I really missed, and I was like, "Damn!"
Wow.
You know, all those people died too, right? George All, Frank Smith, Datus Perry, gone. So,
especially if those guys were in their 80s back then, they're long gone.
Yeah.
And,
but,
wow. Thank you for sharing all that. I mean, it's like you can find a copy of that, an old VHS transfer copy of it on YouTube. And then it's on the Tubi app. I don't know if you've ever seen that. It's like this streaming app.
The title changes. I think they call it
does,
Bigfoot Monster Mystery.
Yeah.
I think Bigfoot Monster Mystery is what I've seen it as on YouTube. But it just keeps floating around. That's for sure. It's like a bad penny. It keeps turning up.
It's like if you know about it, then and if you find someone else that knows about it, it's like you're in this like special, like ultra secret Bigfoot club where it's like, oh, you get that 97 Bigfoot doc, then you're awesome. That's how I look at it anyways. But
oh, wow. it started as a joke from my friend Arthur Purley, who said, let's go play drums for Bigfoot and
Oh, wow.
get Bigfoot to come and check us out. And then one day, BBC comes to town, and I start joking around with Anthony Wonke about the idea, right? In that 9 weeks of driving around, they're all like, yeah, that's going to be the opening scene.
And it's so good, too. It is so good.
And I'm like, really? I mean, it started as a joke. They're like, oh, man, that's we'll zoom in, like they had, just like it is, and I'm like, wow, who knew, So, yeah, it wasn't my plan, but it did start in my head, So
I love it. I love it so much.
The basic ideas turns out also is sound as well. You don't find Bigfoot, they find you. Turns out that's a sound concept. So
very interesting. Another statement you made in your book is you mentioned making six shows and making contributions to half a dozen books. I'm just curious, do you remember, what shows were you involved with making and also, or contributions to books, stuff like that?
The other big one was Sasquatch Odyssey.
Okay.
Right.
Yep.
Where, that one. Then there was a German one that no one's ever seen. A little German vignette. Then there was an Australian one no one's ever seen. A little vignette. Then I did In Search Of with Robert Stack.
Nice. Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah. So, yeah, before Leonard Nimoy, early In Search Of.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Do you remember the names of the German and you said it was Australian? No. Okay. No problem.
I don't even remember. I don't remember the names. I remember the interviews, and then there was another British one that disappeared. Another, some competitor of the BBC had to do an interview too, if there is a competitor of the BBC, or maybe it's a competitor of Channel 4. But another crew came out and did another interview at the time, but I've never seen or heard of that one ever again. Actually, all three of those I never heard of again. There were three that I shot that I never heard a thing ever.
It's very interesting.
2000, year 2000 is when I said, I am not going to be a narrative character for the media about Bigfoot anymore. Thank you very much. Yes.
And you just,
here I am eating my words 22 years later. And,
right.
Here I am. But it's okay now. I'm retired. I'm 66. I'm at a different place in life,
Time to have some fun,
Yeah.
In the Oregon Bigfoot Highway, they taught. So you were listed as a Clackamas, Saskatchewan, or that word is so dang hard to say. Sasquatchian. Okay. One of the requirements is that you camp at least 5 days up the Clackamas or spend 200 hours of boots on the ground research. Is that something did you actually meet those requirements then?
Yeah, without trying,
Okay.
Where the hot areas are after many years. And that's one of the hot areas. It's always been hot. There's always been shit going on over there.
Yeah.
And that's where all that UFO stuff happened and all that. Everything. I've had so many weird things happen to me over there that I maintain a network of observers to this day, but not Boy Scouts, but
okay.
See, well, that's really an overstatement. I've been in natural resources management, and the Warm Springs Reservation is border of the western border of it is right there, not so far from Skookum Lake, little further east. And Thunder Mountain, that was all. Skookum Lake's on Thunder Mountain, and Thunder is a giant Indian in all the Indian stories.
Okay.
So the fact that a giant Indian lives on Thunder Mountain, exactly why it's named Thunder Mountain. I didn't realize that when I was looking at Skookum Lake on Thunder Mountain, and that's where the evil god of the woods lived. I didn't realize.
Oh, wow.
Well, if I looked at the mountain, it was actually named for Thunder, the giant Indian that's in all the stories. So,
wow.
I didn't know that then. And there's a lot I didn't know. There's a lot I don't know still, right? But the truth is that I worked for 4 tribes for 25 years. Well,
Sure.
more than that. I've worked for really 20 tribes, but 4 main tribes, the Yakima, Umatilla, Warm Springs, Nez Perce. Those are the 4 treaty tribes, and I worked on behalf of their fishing rights. They have fishing treaty rights, and I fought for their treaty rights in the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals and won a couple of cases.
Okay.
So I'm a warrior to defend the tribal rights to things like, the fish and wildlife.
That's
and
awesome.
animals and, vegetation. Well, I've had a whole career in it. And I had an annual contract with the Department of Energy, who funded me for all those years to do this work for the tribes. So I've walked between, the feds, DOE, and the tribes for 25 years. I've walked on a tightrope. And, right, I know those areas in Clackamas County now from a whole different perspective, like as the boundary of Indian land coming west. And yeah, like I said, the thing is that many tribal people tell me when they have a sighting.
Oh, wow.
And I have not really spent, until recently, I haven't spent much time outside of Indian country. For the last 25 years, I spent a lot of time in Indian country because I've been doing salmon restoration work. I've been out in the woods and in the wilderness for 25 years on tribal land generally. And I've been a scientist for the tribes for 25 years. And one of the interesting things about that movie that you're talking about, the Bigfoot Monster Mystery, is that when tribal people saw that movie, what they got from it, the takeaway they got in many cases was that I would not hurt another animal. I don't know how you can read that into that movie, but they were like, you wouldn't hurt another animal, would you? And all these different tribal people would come up to me and say, I saw that movie, you wouldn't hurt another animal, would you? And I go, no, I wouldn't, as a matter of fact. That's right. And I couldn't figure out how they got that from watching that film. But that happened to be all across Indian country, and it acted as a calling, as a white card to allow me access all across Indian country, because everybody saw that movie in Indian country.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
And they all liked it. And I didn't know that. And so everybody knew who I was. The moment I started going out in the middle of Indian country, and they're like, the Bigfoot guy. oh, you know. But because that movie, I made real friends with Indians. You know, I worked alongside.
Yeah.
Made a lot of good friends. I have a lot of good friends today that are tribal people, and the real born and raised on the res tribal people. You know, and
Sure.
And so that's a network for me. My connections and my reputation is not something I can share with other people and say,
Oh, exactly.
yeah, tell them you're my friend. And
right.
But the thing is that I get filled in. If anybody on the res sees Bigfoot, I usually hear
That's
about
awesome.
it. You know, like on those 4 reses, and maybe even more, because I just spent the last 4.5 years working for the Cowlitz tribe. So, and everybody knows that I'm that Bigfoot obsessed white guy.
Sorry, did you say that you have contacts with Midwestern tribes as well?
Yeah, I'm always hesitant, but hey, it's come out in public.
Yeah.
I have
that's cool. That's cool.
I have various skill sets. One of my skill sets is payment system architecture.
Oh.
Well, you're a computer guy, right?
Yeah.
So you'll get it. So I take QA contracts coming out of K Street for WIC systems and food stamp systems.
Sure.
And I do QA for the feds and for the tribes in this case when they're building a new WIC system. So a new WIC system and a new food stamp system just got put in the Midwest across 10 tribes.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a 2-year contract I had to do QA on putting on the system as it got put in, because a strange card I have to play is I'm an expert in payment system architecture. You know, because like you know, I'm a computer geek, right? But I'm an old 66-year-old computer geek.
I love that. A lot of the listeners are like, I don't care, but I'm like, dude, I love that stuff. So I totally get it, man. Yeah.
So my thing is all about allocation of resources. I want to help allocate resources in a fair way. I think society should allocate resources in a fair way. Yeah, my soapbox. And so all the work I do and all the jobs and careers I've had have basically touched on that theme, which is trying to make this society allocate resources more fairly. You know, like that's my shtick. That's my game. But it comes out in different ways. And mostly, I've worked for these 10 tribes, and I couldn't talk about it while I did it. Most of the time, I can't talk about what I'm doing. I have to be buttoned up, strategic, and effective, and I cannot talk. But now I'm post-retirement, so I can actually say, oh, yeah, you know, like I've been working for all these tribes for years, you know, and I have a lot of contact. Well, I have tribal friends, and I have a tremendous amount of respect for the tribes. You know, I really, really am just. It's a total privilege to be able to work for the tribes like I do, and I'm just filled with gratitude that I got to do it. You know, I'm just. It's how I feel. I know people are like, oh, you want to be Indian? You know, I'm like, no, it's really on another level, folks.
Yeah, yeah. That is cool that you were able to make. Yeah, you know, you made really a huge difference in the lives of so many people through that. So it's very cool, I think. As we start to kind of wrap things up a little bit. Do you have any words for those that are getting into Bigfoot, the younger generation, the current Bigfooters today?
You broke up for a minute there.
Oh yeah, sorry. Do you have any advice for the current, up and coming Bigfoot generation of the Bigfooters today?
Yeah, sure. Think Chewbacca.
Okay.
Don't think Field and Stream. Field and Stream, no. Chewbacca, yeah. And you're going to be a lot closer. My advice has not changed. Do not underestimate the intelligence of what you are facing here. It is, well, yeah, I mean, I don't know what advice to give them. One of the really good things about Peter Byrne that I need to mention, because nobody really mentions this about him.
Sure.
But this dovetails into advice for the now people. Peter was different than all the other guys back in the day because he was really into Jane Goodall. And he was really into this approach of we should try to communicate with them like Jane Goodall does with the gorillas. And we should, use that approach, the whole friendly communication approach. And he took crap from everybody else for being that way. And he stood up to Dahinden and Krantz and Green. Everybody was like, get out the gun, whatever. And that was the right idea, but he shortly abandoned it and went to this biopsy dart plan where he was going to shoot it with a biopsy dart and get a DNA sample because he needed a DNA sample. And, and then they went to this slightly more violent approach, which I wouldn't recommend even today.
Sure.
But not for the reasons, because they're people. These creatures are people. The closest thing you can understand is people. If you get to know them, you realize they're people. Where have you been? And so all of the others, that I would really say is why Peter Byrne's approach was really enlightened and ahead of the game. And pretty much there's way too much violent, I understand the mechanist viewpoint and the materialist. I must get a body, give it up on the body. No one, I'll point out an interesting omission, pardon me, in the data that we have right now, which is nobody's really ever touched the body. We've looked at the body a lot of times, and it looks like ours, and it looks like it has flesh like ours, and it looks just like
Sure.
one of us, see muscles and shit, but nobody's touched it. And from the strange reports I hear of those that actually touch it, it's rock hard and doesn't meet your expectations about skin. So there's a lot going on with the body. It's different than ours, is my point. It looks the same as ours, but functionally it's different. There's something really different about it. And everybody sort of moves past that problem. Nobody really gets to touch the body, hold the body, even touch it with their hand. More literally, well, here's a story, if
Sure.
I may.
Yeah, definitely.
I had a friend, a tribal friend, who always wanted to find out what happened if he shot a little person in the head. And so he was hunting, and he saw a little person, and he shot it in the head, and it rang like a bell.
Really?
Really loud like a bell. And he had really bad luck for the next 15 years, and then he died.
Wow. Oh, man.
So that's more advice for the youngsters. Don't do that.
Yeah. Guys, let's not do that. That's good advice. Henry, it has been an amazing chat with you. Thanks so much for taking a few hours out of your Friday and chatting with me. Been a fun time. Please take a few minutes. If there's anything, I always let guests at the end, if there's anything they want to plug or, websites or anything, by all means, go ahead.
God, I'm just getting back into this public Bigfoot world. I have no merch, but one day maybe I'll have merch. I have the working title of my book is Superforce Seatco.
Nice.
But could be subject to change. I don't know if I like that, but I'm trying to get that out in 2 months. Hopefully, I've been telling people for years I'm going to finish it. I really am close to finishing it. And finally I'm going to write my what I think about Bigfoot.
That's awesome. Oh, man.
Like, everybody really needs another take on Bigfoot. Oh my God. So,
I mean, I'll read it, dude. I'm pumped for it. So good stuff. Well, thanks, Henry, for hanging out, and you have a good rest of your night there.
You too. Thank you very much.
Please take a minute to help out the show by subscribing on YouTube, making sure you hit the bell so you don't miss any notifications, and share the episode on YouTube with a friend. Also, if you're listening to us on a podcast, thank you so much. Make sure that you're subscribed, share the show with a friend. Really, it's all about sharing the show wherever you can. If you've had a Bigfoot encounter related to the following or know someone who has, please reach out to me at bigfootsociety@gmail.com or pass on my email. Here's the list. If you've had any encounters in Oregon, which I'm sure there's probably a few of you out there, please feel free to reach out immediately. You can use email bigfootsociety@gmail.com. A special thank you to all the Bigfoot Society Patreon and YouTube channel members. It's your support that helps keep the show going, and I extremely appreciate it. If you want to join in the fun, you can join over at patreon.com/The Bigfoot Society. I'll see you there. And again, thanks for listening.
Her and I can get on here and we can tell our stories. Maybe there's somebody else out there listening that's too afraid to tell their story. Maybe this will give them the courage to come out and not feel so bad about it. Who cares what anybody thinks? I know what I saw. I know what's out there. That's all I care about.
Let people know. Please let them know. If you ever see one of these things, you need to tell. Because if you don't, then shame on you. Shame on you.